The morning sun stretched across Naval Base Coronado, painting the concrete in hues of gold and steel. The Pacific breeze carried the faint salt of the ocean, mixing with jet fuel and the metallic tang of machinery. Navy SEALs moved across the courtyard in disciplined silence, their boots striking in unison, their uniforms immaculate. To them, the base was sacred ground, an ecosystem built on loyalty, hierarchy, and unspoken codes of respect. Into that world walked Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Hunter of the United States Air Force. Her presence cut against the rhythm. Every step she took was precise, each movement deliberate, but her insignia made her stand out. The Air Force Eagle glinted on her shoulder, unfamiliar and almost unwelcome here. She knew it. Rachel had learned early in her career that crossing service boundaries often meant crossing egos. Naval aviators tolerated Air Force pilots, but not with warmth. SEALs trusted those who had proven themselves in fire, not those who arrived with polished uniforms. And admirals, especially old-school men like Briggs, saw every outsider as an intrusion. The courtyard quieted when Rachel appeared. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. She carried a sealed folder in her left hand, orders straight from the Pentagon, and a duffel slung over her right shoulder. Her F-22 had landed at Miramar the night before, and this morning she was expected to report in. Expected. That was the key word. But expectation didn't guarantee welcome. At the far end of the courtyard, Admiral James Briggs stepped out of headquarters. His frame was rigid, his posture carved from years of command. At 61, with iron-gray hair and a jaw that looked chiseled from granite, he exuded authority. His reputation matched his presence. A man who tolerated no excuses, who demanded unwavering loyalty, and who guarded his base like a fortress. His eyes locked on Rachel the moment she entered the courtyard. His brow furrowed. He didn't like what he saw. "Hunter," he barked, his voice cutting through the air like a drill instructor's whip. "Air Force, isn't it?" Rachel stopped, pivoted sharply, and saluted. "Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Hunter reporting, sir." "Assigned to Joint Operations." Briggs didn't return the salute. His glare intensified. "Not here, you're not." The silence that followed was heavy, almost unnatural. Dozens of SEALs froze where they stood, their eyes shifting between the Admiral and the Air Force officer. No one dared speak, but curiosity crackled like static. "Sir," Rachel said evenly, her voice calm, professional. "My orders," Briggs cut her off with a sharp gesture. "This is my base. My men. We don't need outsiders waltzing in like they own the place. Especially not Air Force hotshots looking for glory." Rachel's jaw tightened, but her expression never changed. She had been called worse. She had been doubted before, dismissed by men who measured worth by tradition rather than merit. And she had learned to let silence speak louder than protests. "Understood, Admiral," she said, lowering her salute with precision. Briggs smirked, believing he had asserted dominance. "Then turn around, Colonel. Head back to Miramar. We've got no use for you here." The words echoed across the courtyard like a hammer blow. But instead of dispersing, the SEALs seemed to grow stiller, their muscles taut, their eyes locked on Rachel. Something unspoken moved among them, a current invisible to the Admiral, but palpable to every man standing there. Rachel turned on her heel, her boots striking the pavement with unflinching rhythm. She carried herself with quiet dignity, not a trace of hesitation in her stride. Then it happened. A whisper, low but sharp enough to carry. "Valkyrie." One word. Just one. But it spread through the ranks like wildfire. Heads turned. Eyes sharpened. Shoulders squared. The Admiral frowned. He heard it too, but didn't understand. And then slowly, deliberately, one SEAL raised his hand in salute as Rachel passed. Another followed. Then another. until the entire line of hardened warriors stood at rigid attention, saluting the Air Force officer the Admiral had just dismissed. Briggs' face darkened with confusion and irritation. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. No one answered, because the answer wasn't for him. It was for her. Rachel kept walking, eyes forward, her expression unreadable. But inside, a flicker of memory stirred missions flown in hostile skies, radios filled with desperate voices, promises she had made and kept at impossible odds. The name, Valkyrie, wasn't one she had chosen. It had been given to her by men who had lived because she refused to let them die. The courtyard felt electric now, every salute a silent declaration of loyalty, not to her rank, but to her legacy. She hadn't expected it. She hadn't sought it. But it was here, undeniable. And Admiral Briggs, standing stiff and bewildered, realized in that instant that he might have made the gravest mistake of his career. Rachel didn't slow until she reached the base gates. She paused only briefly, enough to draw a controlled breath before exhaling sharply. She didn't need their approval. She didn't need their cheers. But the SEALs' reaction told her everything. They remembered. They remembered Kandahar. They remembered Helmand Province. They remembered the night her voice had come through the radio, calm as steel, guiding them out of a kill zone when every other pilot had been ordered to stand down. And though the Admiral didn't yet know it, Rachel Hunter Valkyrie wasn't leaving. Her orders would make sure of that. And when Briggs finally opened the sealed folder she had carried in her hand, the realization would freeze him in place. The whispers hadn't died when Rachel passed through the gate. If anything, they grew louder in her absence. Valkyrie. Can't be her. Thought she was just a myth. The SEALs exchanged glances, every man thinking the same thing but unwilling to say it aloud in front of the Admiral. Briggs stood rigid, jaw tight, his authority shaken in a way he hadn't expected. He'd commanded this base for 5 years. No one had ever challenged his word. But in a matter of minutes, an Air Force officer had made his own men stand at attention without issuing a single order. That wasn't normal. Briggs stormed back inside headquarters, his aides struggling to keep pace. He slammed Rachel's folder onto his desk, tearing it open with impatient hands. The stamped seals glared back at him, the red ink screaming authenticity. Joint Tasking Order. Priority 1. The words made his stomach knot. Rachel Hunter wasn't here on a courtesy assignment. She wasn't here for inter-branch diplomacy. She was embedded mandatory, essential to a classified SEAL operation that would launch within days. Her role, aerial overwatch. Her aircraft, F-22 Raptor. Her call sign, Valkyrie. Briggs' eyes narrowed at that final word. He had heard whispers of Valkyrie before, usually in hushed tones, passed between operators at bars or in corners of transport planes. A ghost story, he'd thought. A legend about a pilot who had defied odds, who had flown when others refused, who had guided entire SEAL teams home from missions gone wrong. But legends were just that, stories. Now he wasn't so sure. Rachel hadn't gone far. She stopped at a coffee kiosk just outside the base, setting her folder carefully on the counter while the barista prepared a black coffee. She didn't drink for taste. She drank for focus. The whispers she had overheard clung to her mind, stirring memories she usually kept buried. Kandahar, the night sky. Enemy aircraft closing in. Her squadron scattered. SEALs pinned down. The moment she'd chosen to ignore orders and stay in the fight. That was the birth of Valkyrie. Not a call sign chosen in training. Not a nickname gifted by fellow pilots. It was given to her by men whose voices had cracked with fear over the radio, then steadied when she spoke. She had stayed overhead for 4 hours, burning fuel to fumes, holding off threats with precision strikes until the last man was safe. The Air Force brass had reprimanded her. The SEALs had immortalized her. And now, somehow, her legend had walked ahead of her onto Coronado. She took her coffee and sat outside, posture straight, eyes scanning the ocean horizon. She didn't dwell on glory. She never had. What haunted her wasn't the success of those nights, but the men she hadn't been able to save on others. For every team that returned, there was always the one that didn't, and those faces stayed. Back inside, the SEALs gathered in the training hall. Word had spread faster than wildfire. Valkyrie was here. Some had served with men she'd saved. Others had only heard the stories, passed down like folklore. But all of them knew what her presence meant. "Think it's really her?" one asked quietly. "It's her," another answered, voice steady. "I know guys from Helmand. They said she was the only reason they're alive." The respect was palpable, but it wasn't hero worship. SEALs didn't revere outsiders easily. Their salute earlier had come from instinct, not ritual. It was the body's reaction to survival, the acknowledgement of a bond forged in fire. Admiral Briggs entered, his expression a storm cloud. The room went silent. "I don't care what you think you know about Hunter," he said, his tone sharp. "She's Air Force. She doesn't answer to me, and she doesn't run this operation." "You do? Clear?" The SEAL commander, a broad-shouldered veteran named Mason, held Briggs' gaze. "With respect, sir, she doesn't need to run it. She just needs to fly," Briggs bristled. "She's not one of us. She doesn't need to be," Mason replied. "Valkyrie's already proved herself where it counts." In the fight, murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Briggs slammed his hand on the table, ending the discussion. "You'll follow my orders, not hers. This isn't a democracy." But deep down, Briggs knew his grip was slipping. That evening, as the base quieted and the sun bled into the horizon, Rachel walked the flight line at Miramar. Her F-22 sat gleaming under the floodlights, a predator at rest. She ran a hand along the smooth surface of the fuselage, whispering under her breath. "Tomorrow we fly." The aircraft was her sanctuary, her weapon, her partner. It didn't care about politics or branches or egos. It only answered precision, skill, and courage. Behind her, footsteps crunched against the pavement. She turned, finding Commander Mason approaching. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes carried weight. "You know you stirred a storm today," Mason said. Rachel smirked faintly. "Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Your reputation spoke for you." He paused. "You've got men here who'd follow you into hell without question. That doesn't happen overnight." Rachel leaned against the landing gear. "Respect isn't medals or speeches. It's keeping promises. SEALs understand that better than anyone." Mason nodded. "And that scares Briggs. He built this place on control. You walk in, and suddenly every man salutes you instead of him." Rachel's eyes hardened. "I'm not here to take his control. I'm here to keep you alive." Mason studied her for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Then let's make sure this mission ends with all of us coming home." She shook it firmly. And in that handshake, the seeds of an alliance were planted, one that would carry them into darkness soon enough. Far across the base, Admiral Briggs sat in his office, staring at Rachel's orders again. His pride screamed to fight it, to push back against her presence. But the rational part of him, the part that had survived decades of command, knew the Pentagon hadn't sent Valkyrie without reason. Still, he swore to himself that night, she wouldn't outshine him. Whatever it took, he would remind his men who commanded the space. And yet, even as he made the vow, he couldn't shake the image of SEAL saluting her name. Not her rank, not her title. Her legend. The night had fallen like a heavy curtain over Naval Base Coronado. and the hum of distant engines gave the impression of life moving steadily, unaware of the storm about to break. Lights along the runway glimmered faintly, reflecting off the polished hulls of jets waiting for their pilots. Amidst them, Rachel Hunter call sign Valkyrie stood alone, the darkness framing her silhouette like a sentinel poised on the edge of history. Her mind was restless. She replayed the events of the day, the Admiral's dismissal, the whispered salutes, the electric tension that had crackled in the SEAL courtyard. Those men had responded instinctively to her presence, to the name Valkyrie. It wasn't respect alone, it was acknowledgement, recognition, a testament not to her rank, but to the countless nights she had flown over hostile skies, saving soldiers who would have otherwise died. She had carried men home under fire, sometimes defying orders, sometimes risking everything, and that history had followed her here. Yet, it had not prepared her for the weight of expectation she now felt. "Lieutenant Colonel Hunter?" A voice broke her concentration. Rachel turned to see Commander Mason approaching, a tactical map tucked under his arm. His expression was unreadable in the dim light, but there was a subtle gravity in the way he walked. She noted the slight tension in his shoulder seals, rarely showed doubt, yet even he seemed apprehensive about what the mission ahead would demand. "You shouldn't be alone right now," Mason said, gesturing toward the runway. "You've got men counting on you, and I'd rather they hear it from you directly before launch." Rachel folded her arms, exhaling slowly. "I've never believed in speeches, Commander. I fly, I guide. That's it. I don't need to inspire. I need to keep you alive." Mason's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly why they'll follow you, Valkyrie. You don't sell courage. You live it. And tomorrow, you'll be the difference between them coming back or not." A quiet pause settled between them. The faint hum of jets and the distant crash of waves filled the silence. Rachel took one step closer to her F-22, resting a hand on the cold metal. "Do you ever think about it?" she asked softly. "About the ones you can't save?" Mason glanced at her, surprised by the sudden vulnerability in her tone. "Every mission. Every lost man. You carry that weight with you too, don't you?" Rachel nodded, her gaze drifting to the horizon where darkness met the faint silver of moonlight. "It never leaves. That's why I fly. Not for medals, not for recognition. I fly so the ones who can go home, go home. Everyone else." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Mason understood. The memory of men she had failed, men she would never forget, was etched into her very soul. "We'll be ready," Mason said finally, breaking the heavy silence. "Your reputation precedes you. Every operator here knows it. They'll follow you because they trust you, not because they have to. And that trust, it's stronger than any order." Rachel gave a faint nod, silently acknowledging the gravity of his words. Meanwhile, back inside the Admiral's office, Briggs sat slumped behind his desk, reviewing the Pentagon orders again. He was a man who prided himself on control, on structure, on discipline. And yet, here he was, staring at a pilot who had refused to conform to hierarchy. A pilot whose name, Valkyrie, had elicited salutes from SEALs, who had sworn to answer only to him. He felt anger, but deeper than that was a gnawing unease. He had trained his men to respect chain of command, to follow orders without question. And now, in the span of a single morning, an Air Force officer had unraveled his authority with nothing more than presence and reputation. Briggs forced himself to breathe. "She's Air Force," he muttered, almost like a mantra. "Not mine. Not one of mine." Yet every time he replayed the courtyard scene in his mind, every man standing at attention, every crisp salute, he felt a twinge of doubt. And it scared him. That night, Rachel returned to her quarters briefly, unpacking her kit with methodical precision. Everything was laid out according to habit. Flight suit, helmet, gloves, weapon systems manuals, and personal mementos she carried on every mission. She paused to touch a small photograph taped inside the cockpit of her jet, a snapshot of her squadron, grinning before a deployment that would become a nightmare in memory. One operator was missing in the photo now, lost during a mission she couldn't save. Her fingers lingered on his face, and she whispered a promise. "I won't let anyone else be lost tomorrow," she murmured. The phone in her room buzzed. It was Mason. "Meet me at the briefing room." 20 minutes. His voice was curt, professional, yet tinged with urgency. Rachel grabbed her jacket, slinging it over her shoulder, and stepped into the night. The wind off the ocean tugged at her hair and her uniform, carrying with it the scent of salt and fuel. Every step she took toward the briefing room was measured, but her mind raced. The SEAL team had already gathered, a mix of hardened veterans and younger operators, all silent, all waiting. They respected her presence without needing her to say a word. Their eyes followed her, searching for reassurance. "Valkyrie," Mason addressed her formally, though there was a hint of camaraderie in his tone. "We've run simulations, but nothing compares to actual conditions. Enemy intel suggests anti-aircraft installations along the ridge. Extraction is limited. Timing is critical. We go in at 0400. Our success hinges on air cover." Rachel nodded. She had reviewed satellite imagery, threat assessments, and prior mission reports. Yet hearing it articulated by Mason, in the same room as the SEALs, in the calm before the storm, grounded the stakes. "I understand," she said. "I'll keep you covered. You move fast, you move precise, and I'll be above you, clearing threats. No heroics. No deviations." One of the operators, a tall man named Jacobs, met her gaze. "We know what Valkyrie can do. We trust you. Just bring us home." Rachel met his eyes, the weight of every mission she'd flown pressing down on her. She gave a firm nod. "Every one of you?" The team shifted, readying themselves for departure. There was tension in the air, but also confidence. The Admiral's presence felt distant here. His authority couldn't penetrate the bond forming between Valkyrie and the operators who would rely on her for their lives. Hours passed quickly, and the night deepened. Rachel performed final system checks on her F-22, running diagnostics, reviewing threat algorithms, and memorizing the terrain below. Every panel, every readout, every potential enemy emplacement was assessed with surgical precision. She wasn't nervous. She didn't have the luxury of panic. She had a job to do, and failure was not an option. When she finally stepped back, the first streaks of dawn were brushing the horizon. Orange and pink light collided with the cold gray of the Pacific, painting the runway in surreal hues. It was beautiful, serene, and deceptive. The calm would not last. Mason arrived beside her, his gaze lingering on the jet. "This is it," he said softly. "Every mission we've trained for leads here. You're the difference between success and disaster." Rachel's jaw tightened. "I fly for them. Not for glory, not for orders. For them. And I won't fail." Mason nodded, and in that moment, the silent understanding passed between them. Survival depended on trust, precision, and courage. At that instant, Valkyrie was more than a name. She was the guardian of lives, the invisible shield over men who expected nothing less than perfection. And tomorrow, the first battle would begin. The early morning fog clung to the base like a living thing, curling around the runways and hangars, thickening the air with anticipation. Naval Base Coronado was quiet, too quiet, Rachel thought, but she knew the deceptive calm was a harbinger of chaos. The horizon was tinged with pale gold, and somewhere in the distance, the ocean whispered against the shore, oblivious to the storm that would soon erupt in the mountains abroad. Rachel Hunter, call sign Valkyrie, stood at the edge of the runway, scanning her F-22. Every panel, every readout, every optical sensor was a familiar friend in her hands, and yet the gravity of what lay ahead weighed on her chest. The SEAL team depended on her not just for air support, but for survival itself. A single misstep could cost them everything. Commander Mason approached, his face lit by the rising sun. "The team's ready," he said, his voice low but firm. "Every operator knows the plan. Every route is mapped. But Valkyrie," he hesitated, the weight of responsibility clear. "They trust you completely. You have to be the shield they don't see coming." Rachel nodded, gripping the edge of the cockpit. "I will. No one gets left behind." Her words weren't rhetoric, they were a vow. And she intended to keep it. Inside the Admiral's office, James Briggs paced like a caged predator. The night had been sleepless, every moment haunted by the whispers of his own men's loyalty to Valkyrie. He reviewed the mission orders again, scanning the names of operators, the extraction point, the enemy threat assessment. Every calculation, every projection, reinforced the same truth. Valkyrie was indispensable. But he hated it. He hated being overshadowed. He hated the power shift that had occurred simply because one pilot had earned respect in combat. And worst of all, he hated that he couldn't challenge it without risking the lives of the very men under his command. Briggs slammed his fist on the desk. "She's Air Force. She's not my responsibility." His aide, a young lieutenant named Daniels, watched silently. "Sir, you know she's the only air cover they'll have. Without her, the mission fails." Briggs' jaw tightened. "Then the mission is doomed if they can't follow my orders." Daniels said nothing. Briggs didn't notice the hesitation in his aide's eyes, the quiet acknowledgement that Valkyrie's authority was stronger than his own in that moment. Meanwhile, Rachel moved along the flight line, finalizing her pre-flight checks. The roar of distant engines grew, as other aircraft prepared to support extraction teams. But none would play as pivotal a role as her F-22. Her flight path had been calculated down to the second. She would cut off enemy fire, destroy anti-aircraft emplacements, and ensure the SEAL team reached the extraction point safely. It was a tall order, and she felt the weight of every life depending on her decisions. "Morning, Valkyrie." Mason's voice pulled her from her focus. She glanced up to see the SEAL team approaching, every man loaded with equipment, every eye on her. They didn't speak. Words weren't necessary. Their trust was visible in the way they moved, confident and precise. Rachel walked toward them. "We go in quiet, precise, and fast," she said. "Follow the plan. Trust me above. I'll see threats before you do." No heroics, no deviations. One operator, Jacobs, nodded. "We've got your back." Every step of the way, Rachel's gaze swept over them, memorizing faces, calculating risk. "Then let's move." The briefing room buzzed with a low hum as Rachel and Mason went over the final details. Satellite images covered the table, showing the rugged terrain where the SEALs would operate. Enemy positions were marked, kill zones highlighted, and extraction points circled in red. Every variable had been accounted for, every contingency discussed. Rachel traced a route with her finger. If they shift north, they'll run straight into a secondary patrol. I can intercept, but you'll need to adjust fast. Maintain radio discipline. No chatter unless necessary. I don't need noise giving us away. The operators listened intently, absorbing every detail. Every instruction she gave carried authority not because of rank, but because of competence. Mason noticed how their focus sharpened, how their breathing synchronized, how their resolve hardened. "Valkyrie's calm because she knows the unknown better than anyone," Mason whispered to Jacobs. Jacobs' expression was tense but respectful. "I hope that's true," he muttered. Rachel caught the whisper, and though she didn't smile, she acknowledged it with a nod. Calm wasn't a facade. It was a tool, and she wielded it like a weapon. Back at the base, Briggs observed the activity from a distance, binoculars pressed to his eyes. Every move, every preparation, stoked a mix of fear and envy in him. Valkyrie wasn't just preparing for a mission. She was orchestrating an entire operation in a way he had never seen. Her presence transformed the SEALs from soldiers executing orders into a cohesive unit, synchronized in mind and motion. He felt the weight of his authority slipping, and he hated the feeling. But deep down, he knew she was right for the mission. Every instinct, every tactical assessment, confirmed it. She wasn't here to be impressive. She was here to save lives. Briggs gritted his teeth and stepped back, letting the SEALs and Valkyrie take the lead. As dawn broke fully, Rachel climbed into the cockpit of her F-22. The interior was familiar, a cocoon of instruments and technology that responded perfectly to her touch. Helmet on, comms active, she ran through systems checks, radar, weapon systems, infrared targeting, communications, navigation. Every reading confirmed readiness. Her hands moved with practiced precision over the controls. She had flown through worse conditions, worse threats. Yet nothing in her life had been as critical as the mission that lay ahead. The SEALs below were more than soldiers. They were lives she had sworn to protect. Every calculation, every maneuver, every decision would ripple across the mountains they were about to enter. Mason approached one last time. "You ready, Valkyrie?" Rachel's voice was calm, unshaken. Always. Minutes later, the SEALs loaded into their transport, the hum of engines filling the early morning air. The extraction route was briefed again, and radios were double-checked. Every man was aware that the success of the operation depended entirely on precision and timing. Valkyrie's air cover wasn't optional. It was their lifeline. As the transport prepared to taxi toward the runway, Rachel's F-22 streaked across the sky in low flight, testing instruments, observing terrain. From above, she could see the hills where enemy positions had been reported, the winding path the SEALs would follow, and the narrow corridors where danger could strike without warning. Every moment was anticipation, every second loaded with stakes. She exhaled slowly. The calm before the storm was almost unbearable. And then, with a final nod to herself, she signaled readiness. The mission was about to begin. The pre-dawn sky was still heavy with darkness when the transport carrying the SEAL team rumbled down the runway. The engines reverberated through the hangar, a low, menacing hum that signaled the start of a dangerous journey. Rachel Hunter, high above in her F-22, watched every movement from the clouds of altitude, her eyes scanning instruments, radar feeds, and the dim outlines of the terrain below. Her jet's afterburners glimmered faintly in the early morning light, a predator poised to descend into chaos. Valkyrie's presence was more than tactical, it was psychological. Every operator on the ground trusted her instinctively, even if they had never flown with her before. "Formation check," Rachel said into her comms, voice calm but authoritative. Mason's voice responded, steady. "All accounted for. Teams tight. Movements green." Rachel's gaze swept the ridges that hid enemy positions. Satellites had painted a rough outline, but intelligence rarely captured everything. Anti-aircraft positions could be anywhere. Snipers could be watching from hidden crevices, and the narrow valley below offered little room for error. A single misstep could turn a controlled insertion into a nightmare. The transport descended into the valley, every bump of the rotor blades echoing like a warning. Rachel adjusted altitude slightly, weaving between peaks and using the early fog to mask her movements from radar below. Her fingers danced over the throttle and controls with precision, each adjustment a calculated maneuver to keep the SEALs safe. Her mind replayed countless scenarios. Enemy fire, ambush points, extraction difficulties, all weighed in a split second, calculated, adjusted, executed. Valkyrie didn't hesitate. She couldn't. Below, the SEALs exited the transport in tight formation, moving silently through the rugged terrain. Every step was deliberate, every movement measured. Their eyes flicked toward the sky occasionally, trusting that Valkyrie above would eliminate threats they couldn't see. The first signs of danger came almost immediately. A ridgeline shifted unexpectedly, and heat signatures indicated a small enemy patrol moving toward the SEAL's route. Rachel's fingers tightened on the controls. "Enemy movement," she said into comms. "They're too close for an ambush. Adjust your path 30 meters east. I'll clear ahead." Mason's voice confirmed quickly, relaying the adjustment to the team. The SEALs moved without hesitation, their trust in her unshakable. Rachel angled the F-22 slightly, locking onto the patrol. Missiles armed, targeting systems verified. She released a precision strike that incapacitated the enemy without revealing the team's position. The SEALs moved forward, unaware of how close they had been to disaster. Only Rachel knew. Hours passed in tense silence as the team advanced. The rugged terrain slowed their progress, forcing adjustments at every turn. Rachel remained vigilant, scanning the skies for threats, calculating wind speed, angle, and trajectory for every potential strike. Every radio communication from the SEALs was measured, precise, never unnecessary. Then came the first significant resistance. A hidden anti-aircraft emplacement opened fire, tracer rounds streaking toward the transport and the team below. The SEALs ducked instinctively, taking cover behind boulders and ridges. Rachel reacted instantly, maneuvering her F-22 with expert precision. She unleashed a carefully calculated barrage, destroying the emplacement before it could reload. Explosions rocked the valley, and dust and smoke clouded the horizon. The SEALs pressed forward, moving past the destroyed positions, unaware of how critical her intervention had been. Rachel exhaled, tension radiating through her shoulders. This was the reality she had trained for. Threats appearing without warning, split-second decisions separating life from death. The mission intensified. Enemy patrols increased, their strategy shifting as they realized the SEALs had air support above. Rachel adjusted altitude constantly, scanning for heat signatures, infrared anomalies, and unusual movement. Each strike had to be precise, avoiding any collateral damage to the operators below. At one point, a sniper opened fire from a concealed position, aiming directly at one of the SEALs. Rachel locked onto the target, taking the shot with surgical accuracy. The sniper went down, leaving the operator unharmed. Mason's voice crackled in the comms, relief evident. "Nice work, Valkyrie," he said. "That was close." Rachel's response was measured. "Stay focused." That was the first of many. "Keep moving." The team approached the extraction zone, but danger wasn't finished. Enemy reinforcements had mobilized, attempting to intercept the SEALs as they neared the pickup point. Rachel anticipated the movements, calling out directions and intercepting threats with calculated strikes. Her F-22 streaked through the sky, missiles locking onto enemy positions with precision timing. Each strike cleared the path for the operators, who moved faster, steadier, knowing Valkyrie was above them. The extraction zone came into view, a narrow clearing surrounded by cliffs and foliage. The SEALs approached cautiously, preparing for the final push. Rachel flew low, scanning for hidden threats, every second critical. The enemy had one final chance to ambush the team, and Valkyrie was determined not to let it happen. "Final stretch," she said calmly. "Keep tight, stay low." "I've got you." The SEALs nodded, sweat dripping from their brows, muscles tense, hearts pounding but confident in the presence of the woman above them, who had saved countless lives before. The extraction team landed, engines roaring as the SEALs boarded. Rachel flew a tight circle above, scanning every angle. Enemy fire erupted from a distant ridge, but her response was immediate. Precision strikes silenced the threat, clearing the area completely. She guided the transport out of the valley, shielding it from unseen dangers. Mason's voice was filled with controlled relief. "We're clear," he said, though his tone belied the adrenaline that coursed through his veins. Rachel exhaled for the first time in hours. She hadn't relaxed yet, not until every operator was safely off the ground. The F-22 streaked alongside the transport as it climbed above the treetops, leaving the valley behind. Rachel scanned for remaining threats until the team was out of range. Finally, she leveled off, the mission complete. Every operator who had trusted her was alive. Back at Naval Base Coronado, the SEALs returned to their debriefing point, fatigued but intact. Word of Valkyrie's precise interventions had spread among the ranks, even reaching Briggs' office. He watched from a distance, arms crossed, jaw tight, a mixture of awe and resentment simmering beneath the surface. Rachel descended from her F-22, removing her helmet. Sweat and grime streaked her face, but her eyes were steady. She had done what she had always done, kept her word, protected those who relied on her. The SEALs approached, saluting, a gesture of respect for a pilot who had never asked for it, but had earned it repeatedly. Briggs noticed the salutes, each one in acknowledgement of Valkyrie's authority in the field. His authority had been challenged, and he couldn't deny it. Mason spoke quietly to her as the others dispersed. "You did it. Every single one of them made it out because of you." Rachel nodded, her face unreadable. "They're alive. That's all that matters." And in that quiet moment, Valkyrie wasn't just a call sign. She was a guardian, a shield, and a living legend. The valley was silent now, but the echoes of battle lingered in the air, carrying the metallic scent of spent ordnance and scorched earth. Rachel Hunter, call sign Valkyrie, hovered above in her F-22, scanning the horizon, her eyes calculating, every nerve taut with vigilance. The mission wasn't over, not yet. Survival depended on anticipation, on predicting enemy movements, on knowing the terrain and the men below. The SEALs were exhausted, but organized. They moved with disciplined precision toward the extraction point, sweat and grime streaking their faces. Each operator knew they had been alive today only because of Valkyrie's intervention. Her presence above had transformed what could have been a massacre into a controlled extraction. Yet Rachel's mind remained restless. Danger lingered even after the immediate threat was neutralized. "Team, adjust formation. Watch for sniper fire on the western ridge," Rachel called into comms, voice calm, controlled, yet carrying the authority that inspired obedience. Mason responded instantly. Adjusting. Eyes sharp, the operators moved smoothly, each step deliberate, each movement synchronized with precision. Rachel's radar detected faint heat signatures on a distant cliff. Sniper confirmed. "I've got a lock. Move 3 meters east. Now." The SEALs shifted without hesitation. Rachel unleashed a calculated missile strike, a clean hit that left the sniper incapacitated without alerting further enemy positions. No one below saw the intervention. They only knew they were safe. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by calculated comms and distant sounds of movement. Rachel's eyes scanned the rugged terrain, reading patterns in the rocks, shadows, and sparse foliage. Every hill, every ridge, every potential ambush site was a puzzle she had to solve in real time. A mistake would cost lives, and she couldn't afford one. Suddenly, radar detected a vehicle convoy approaching the extraction zone from the north. Enemy reinforcements. Rachel's fingers tightened on the controls. She had mere seconds to neutralize the threat before the SEALs were exposed. Enemy convoy, northern approach. Intercept immediately. "I'll guide you around it," she instructed. Missiles launched with precision, striking the lead vehicle and disabling the rest. The SEALs moved forward, now aware of the interference, but trusting Valkyrie's interventions. Admiral Briggs watched from a remote observation point, jaw clenched, arms crossed, his pride eating away at him. Valkyrie was performing above and beyond what any pilot under his command could have accomplished. Every decision, every strike, had been perfect. Yet he still struggled to reconcile his resentment with the undeniable reality. She had saved lives today, countless lives. He turned his gaze toward the returning transport, every operator inside a living testament to Valkyrie's skill. A quiet part of him, one he refused to acknowledge, admired her. But authority and ego warred inside him, leaving him trapped between acknowledgement and bitterness. Below, the SEALs pressed forward into the final approach to the extraction point. The terrain narrowed, cliffs rising sharply on either side. Enemy movements became sporadic, but dangerous hidden teams, patrols, and sniper positions. The operators' coordination was flawless, but Rachel knew even one mistake could unravel everything. Left flank, possible ambush. 2 targets moving south, she called, voice steady but alert. Mason adjusted the team's path instantly. "Copy, Valkyrie." Adjusting formation. Her F-22 streaked low, dropping precision-guided ordnance. Explosions rocked the ground, shaking loose debris from cliffs, sending enemy operators scrambling for cover. Every strike was deliberate. No collateral damage, no unnecessary noise. Each action cleared the path, allowing the SEALs to move forward with confidence. "Keep moving," Rachel urged. "Extraction is minutes away." Suddenly, a faint signal appeared on her radar, multiple heat signatures converging from an unexpected ridge. It was a coordinated counterattack, an attempt to trap the SEALs before they reached extraction. Rachel's pulse quickened, but her movements remained fluid, calculated. Enemy ambush, northern ridge. Prepare for intercept. Mason, your team, split left and right. "I'll clear the ridge," she instructed, her mind racing through potential outcomes. The SEALs executed the maneuver with precision, splitting into flanking positions as Rachel dove low, missiles and targeting systems engaging the ambush positions. One after another, enemy combatants were neutralized before they could fire a single shot. Dust and debris clouded the air, but Rachel's focus never wavered. Every operator on the ground had a chance to live because of her. As the team closed in on the extraction zone, Mason whispered over comms, exhaustion evident. "Valkyrie, we wouldn't be here without you." Rachel didn't respond immediately. She scanned the area, eyes tracing every shadow, every ridge line. "Not done yet. Keep moving. Extraction is the priority. No heroics, Mason. Stay alive." Her words were more than instructions. They were a vow. Every operator understood that she wasn't just an air cover. She was a shield, a guardian, a presence above them that demanded their trust because it had been earned through countless missions. The extraction point finally came into view, a small clearing carved into the terrain, just enough space for the helicopter to land safely. Rachel circled above, scanning for threats, adjusting altitude and speed in perfect harmony with the transport's movements. She could see enemy combatants attempting to flank from the east, hidden in shadows and boulders. "East flank, moving to intercept." "I've got eyes on all targets," she said, voice steady, precise. Missiles and targeted strikes cleared the path. Explosions lit the valley, shaking loose dust and debris. The SEALs pressed forward, finally reaching the clearing with only minor scratches from debris and environmental hazards. Rachel exhaled. Extraction was imminent, but vigilance remained crucial. The helicopter descended into the clearing, rotors whipping the air into a chaotic vortex. The SEALs moved swiftly, boarding in disciplined formation. Rachel guided the transport through the terrain, her eyes scanning constantly for remaining threats. One misstep, one hidden enemy, could jeopardize everything. The last operators boarded, and the helicopter lifted off, its engines screaming against the dawn. Rachel followed closely, covering their ascent, neutralizing any remaining resistance with precise, controlled strikes. By the time they cleared the valley, every SEAL was accounted for, safe and alive. Back on the base, as the SEALs disembarked and regrouped, Mason approached Rachel. "You saved every one of them. Every single operator made it back because of you." Rachel shook her head slightly, voice low but firm. "I didn't save them for thanks. I saved them because it's my job. Because I promised. Every mission, every life, I keep my word." The SEALs saluted again, a quiet acknowledgement of respect and gratitude, unspoken but understood. Valkyrie didn't seek admiration, yet it came naturally, earned in fire and precision. Briggs watched from a distance, arms crossed, jaw tight. Pride and resentment warred within him. Valkyrie had proven herself beyond any doubt, yet his ego recoiled at the reality. Still, he knew one immutable truth. Without her, this mission would have ended in tragedy. And for the first time in his long career, he wondered if he could ever truly command the respect that came from earned heroism, not rank alone. The valley below was a fractured chessboard of shadows, smoke, and debris. Dawn's first light spilled over jagged cliffs, casting long, ominous silhouettes. The SEALs had reached the extraction point, but danger lingered like a predator hiding in plain sight. Rachel Hunter, call sign Valkyrie, hovered above in her F-22, her eyes scanning every ridge, every crevice, every subtle shift in the landscape. She didn't just fly. She predicted, anticipated, and neutralized threats before they could strike. The transport carrying the operators hovered precariously, its rotors whipping clouds of dust into the thin morning air. Valkyrie adjusted her flight path, keeping line of sight with the helicopter and the terrain below. The faint, almost imperceptible hum of enemy vehicles approached from the northeast. Reinforcements. Enemy reinforcements. Northeast ridge. Fast-moving convoy. They're aiming to intercept. "Mason, adjust your approach," Rachel instructed calmly, her voice a razor of authority cutting through static. Mason's response was immediate. "Copy. Splitting team to cover flanks." Rachel's F-22 angled sharply, engines screaming as she streaked toward the enemy, missiles locked, weapons systems primed. In a ballet of destruction, she neutralized the convoy with surgical strikes. Vehicles erupted in controlled explosions, thick black smoke curling toward the sky. Dust and debris scattered across the valley floor. The SEALs pressed forward, unseen yet shielded, moving with unwavering precision. Suddenly, a sniper opened fire from an unexpected ridge, targeting one of the operators still securing the perimeter. Rachel's hands moved instinctively, missile lock acquired in seconds. She fired, and the sniper was neutralized before a single shot hit its mark. "Valkyrie, you've got eyes everywhere," Mason muttered over comms, admiration barely concealed. Rachel didn't reply. Focus required silence. Every second mattered, every operator depended on her. The SEALs advanced, extracting wounded operators with disciplined speed. Every step forward carried risk, but Valkyrie's coverage allowed them to move with relative safety. But then came the unexpected, multiple heat signatures converging near the extraction zone from a concealed valley pass. A coordinated ambush. Rachel's pulse quickened, but her hands never faltered. Ambush confirmed. Multiple hostiles converging. "I'll neutralize while you maneuver," she commanded. The SEALs executed the split formation, moving into defensive positions. Rachel dove low, weaving between rocky cliffs, missiles, and targeting systems, engaging the ambush with lethal precision. Enemy combatants fell before they could react, debris flying in controlled chaos. Every operator below had a chance to survive because of her. Minutes stretched like hours. Valkyrie's F-22 streaked through smoke and dust. The sky above the extraction point, a storm of controlled destruction. Every strike was deliberate. Every movement calculated. One wrong move and the mission would collapse. Back at the observation post, Admiral Briggs' hands trembled slightly, his jaw tight. He couldn't deny what he was seeing. Rachel Hunter was performing feats beyond any expectation, commanding respect and controlling the battlefield in ways that challenged his authority. Pride battled rage within him. He wanted to command her, to remind her that she was not above him. Yet he knew deep down, any interference would risk the lives of the SEALs. Briggs felt helpless, a rare and bitter sensation. The ambush was nearly neutralized, but Rachel noticed an anomaly on her infrared scan. A secondary sniper team, hidden in the cliff shadows, preparing to fire at the extraction helicopter. Her pulse remained steady. Instincts honed over countless missions kicked in. 2 snipers, eastern cliff. I'll engage. Keep moving forward, she instructed. Her missiles found their targets with precision. Explosions rocked the ridge, and the cliffside gave way to dust and smoke, obscuring the enemy. The SEALs moved forward, still unaware of how close they had come to catastrophe. Mason's voice came through comms, taut with relief. "Valkyrie, you just saved 2 lives again." Rachel's tone remained calm. "No time to breathe. Extraction isn't clear yet. Stay tight." The final leg of the mission approached. Enemy positions began to crumble under Valkyrie's relentless air cover, but resistance remained. Hidden mortar fired sporadically, forcing the SEALs to take cover. Rachel adjusted altitude and speed, locking onto mortar positions and neutralizing them with precision-guided strikes. Smoke and dust swirled around the valley, limiting visibility. Below, the operators pushed forward, wounded and fatigued, yet disciplined, synchronized, and unwavering in trust. Every strike above allowed them to move closer to safety. Every life saved was a testament to Valkyrie's unmatched skill. Then, the last obstacle, a heavily fortified ridge blocking the extraction path. Enemy fire rained down. Tracers cut through the smoke, narrowly missing the transport and the SEALs below. Rachel's mind calculated every variable in milliseconds: missile angles, blast radius, terrain collapse, wind speed. Her fingers tightened on the controls. She had only one chance to clear the path. "Brace for impact," she muttered to herself. Missiles streaked toward the ridge. Explosions tore through the fortifications, sending debris cascading down the cliffside. The extraction zone was clear for now. Dust and smoke filled the air, but the SEALs emerged unscathed, moving toward the transport that waited like a beacon. The helicopter descended into the clearing, rotors whipping dust into a chaotic vortex. The SEALs moved with disciplined speed, boarding quickly, shields raised against any last-minute attack. Rachel circled above, scanning for remaining threats. Weapon systems primed to intercept any attempt to compromise the extraction. Enemy combatants made one final push from a concealed ravine. Rachel engaged with surgical precision, neutralizing each threat with cold efficiency. The SEALs climbed aboard, tension thick in the air. Mason whispered over comms, exhaustion evident. "Valkyrie, we couldn't have done this without you." Rachel exhaled for the first time, hands steady but heart pounding. "Focus on extraction. We're not safe until everyone is out." The helicopter lifted off, the team inside accounted for and unharmed. Rachel followed closely, scanning the terrain, clearing threats until they were well beyond the valley. Only then did she level off, the mission effectively complete. Back at Naval Base Coronado, the SEALs disembarked, tired but alive. Each man saluted Valkyrie, acknowledgement not of rank, but of the lives she had saved. She returned no theatrics, only a nod, and measured calm, as was her way. Admiral Briggs watched from a distance, jaw tight, arms crossed. Pride warred with resentment. He could not deny the facts. Valkyrie had performed beyond any expectation, saving lives with skill and precision that no man under his command could match. He clenched his fists, his mind a whirlwind of frustration and grudging respect. Valkyrie was more than an Air Force officer. She was a legend of force that had proven herself in fire and chaos, unbound by ego or rank. Mason approached Rachel quietly. You kept your promise. Every life made it back. You saved them all. Rachel's expression was unreadable. I keep my word. That's all that matters. The SEALs saluted once more, an unspoken acknowledgement of a hero they trusted above all else. Valkyrie didn't seek recognition, but it found her nonetheless, carved into reality by every life she had saved. And as the sun climbed higher, lighting the valley in gold and silver, Valkyrie stood quietly, a guardian, a shield, and a living legend whose story would be remembered long after the battle had ended. The sun had fully risen over Naval Base Coronado, its golden light spilling across the runway and hangars. Dust still hung in the air from the morning's chaos, but the battle had ended. The Valley mission was complete. Every SEAL operator was accounted for, every life preserved. And yet, the aftershocks of what had occurred in the mountains were still palpable, etched into every man and woman who had taken part. Rachel Hunter, call sign Valkyrie, stepped down from her F-22, helmet in hand, sweat streaked across her face, eyes steady and alert. The adrenaline still hummed through her veins, but she felt the satisfaction of a mission executed with precision. She had kept her word. Every operator had made it back. That was all that mattered. Mason approached first, his face taut but filled with a rare expression of relief and admiration. You did it. Every single operator came back. No casualties, Valkyrie. I don't know how to thank you enough. Rachel shook her head, her gaze scanning the horizon, still wary. No thanks needed. You follow orders, you survive. I do my job, I survive. That's how it works. Yet, even as she spoke, she felt the weight of the operation settling into her bones. This wasn't just another mission. It had tested every skill, every instinct, every ounce of her focus. And it had proven something else entirely. That trust, earned through action, was stronger than rank, politics, or protocol. The SEALs gathered, fatigue etched into every face, but spirits high with the knowledge they had survived. They saluted Valkyrie in unison, a gesture that had become almost ritual after each life-saving maneuver she had executed during the mission. It wasn't about formalities. It was about acknowledgement, respect, and gratitude. Jacobs, a tall operator who had first spoken up in Part 4, stepped forward. Valkyrie, sir, you didn't just keep us alive. You gave us a chance we didn't even know we had. Thank you. Rachel nodded, voice calm. You all made the right moves. I just kept the threats from getting in the way. You earned it. Every life you saved was because of your skill, not mine. Mason added quietly. They trust you because you've never failed them. Not once. That's why they follow you, Valkyrie. Not because they have to, but because they know you've got their backs. Rachel felt a rare flicker of satisfaction. Recognition wasn't her goal, but acknowledgement from those who understood the cost of survival was something different. Something earned. Admiral Briggs remained apart from the group, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes narrowing as he watched the interaction. Pride and resentment warred within him. Valkyrie had done everything he couldn't have imagined, neutralized ambushes, destroyed enemy positions, protected every operator, but she had done it without answering to him. He swallowed hard, trying to maintain authority, yet a grudging respect crept into his awareness. Valkyrie was more than an Air Force officer. She was an unstoppable force, a guardian whose actions had spoken louder than any command. Finally, Briggs spoke, his voice low but carrying weight. "Hunter, step over here." Rachel turned slowly, wary but composed. She approached, hands relaxed at her sides, eyes steady. Briggs' eyes met hers, hard and unyielding. "I've watched your performance today. It's impressive. You kept everyone alive. You executed with precision. You did what I couldn't." There was a pause. Rachel said nothing. She knew better than to interrupt. Briggs exhaled, a sound filled with frustration, pride, and a strange kind of awe. "You've earned every salute they gave you. And I suppose you've earned my respect as well." Rachel inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the rare concession. "Respect is earned in action, Admiral. You've got mine too, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that everyone made it back." Briggs grunted, turning away to hide the mix of emotion threatening to show. Valkyrie had challenged his authority, overshadowed him, yet in doing so, she had saved lives under his command. That was a reality he couldn't ignore. Later, at the debriefing, the operators recounted the mission, noting Valkyrie's interventions at every critical moment. Each story, each saved life, each precise strike was a testament to her skill and composure under pressure. Analysts, commanders, and even Pentagon observers took careful notes, recognizing that Valkyrie's methods weren't just effective, they were exemplary. Rachel listened, her expression unreadable, but her mind cataloged every detail. Lessons learned, patterns observed, threats neutralized. She absorbed the information not for recognition, but for preparation. Every mission taught something. Every victory revealed vulnerabilities. And she had no intention of letting any operator or pilot fall prey to the same dangers again. As the day progressed, the base buzzed with activity. Maintenance crews repaired vehicles. Medics tended to minor injuries, and Valkyrie's F-22 was readied for the next assignment. Yet even amidst the calm of routine, the story of her actions spread like wildfire. Whispers in the barracks, murmurs in briefing rooms, salutes exchanged in corridors, all spoke of the pilot who had arrived unannounced and turned a mission that could have been a disaster into a flawless extraction. Rachel moved quietly through the activity, observing operators, checking instruments, and cataloging everything in her mind. She didn't seek attention, but she could feel the respect radiating from those around her. The SEAL's trust, the acknowledgement from Mason, and even the grudging recognition from Briggs, all were subtle affirmations of a legacy that was already forming. By evening, the SEAL team gathered for a quiet moment of reflection. Exhausted, bruised, and mentally taxed, they shared stories of near misses, moments when Valkyrie's presence had made the difference between life and death. Laughter and relief mingled with fatigue, a release of tension built up over hours of danger. Mason approached Rachel privately. "They'll remember this mission forever. And they'll remember you, Valkyrie. You're not just a legend. You're a guardian." Rachel smiled faintly, an expression rare and fleeting. "I'm just a pilot doing my job. Legends are just stories people tell to feel safe. What matters is what's real, what happened today, and the fact that every operator made it home." Mason nodded, understanding perfectly. Legends were made in stories, but survival, trust, and skill were made in action. And today, Valkyrie had proven that she embodied all three. Admiral Briggs walked past, his gaze lingering for a moment longer than usual. He had been forced to reckon with something beyond his control, someone whose presence, skill, and resolve had rewritten the rules he had built his career upon. He hadn't yet found words to reconcile admiration with ego, but deep down, he knew one truth. Rachel Hunter, Valkyrie, had earned a place in history that no rank could challenge. The base slowly settled into evening routine. Lights twinkled along the runways. Aircraft sat in orderly rows, and the operators rested, some sharing quiet moments of camaraderie, others simply breathing in relief. Rachel Hunter stood atop a small ridge overlooking the base, helmet tucked under her arm, eyes scanning the horizon. She wasn't finished. There would always be another mission, another threat, another group of operators who needed her skill, precision, and calm judgment. And when that time came, Valkyrie would fly once more calculated, lethal, and unwavering. For now, though, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought of the men she had saved, the operators who had trusted her above all else, and the silent acknowledgement of Admiral Briggs. She had not sought glory, nor did she desire it. She sought only precision, skill, and the fulfillment of a vow, to protect those who could not protect themselves. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Valkyrie stood alone, a sentinel above the base, a living legend whose story had already begun to inspire all who had witnessed her in action. She had arrived unannounced. She had defied expectations. She had saved lives. And in doing so, she had become more than a pilot. She had become Valkyrie. And every SEAL, every operator, and even Admiral Briggs would remember that name for the rest of their lives.